I believe that their efforts are doomed because they are as though they are attempting to put a giant rope around our solar system and prevent its progress, something that will not occur. But nonetheless, they seem to be diligently working to preserve the older cycles as opposed to becoming harmonious with the new cycles. Did that make any sense at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you totally that they're trying to keep the things as they were used to, but it's not anymore. That's it. So, and the obvious question would be next, that I hear from many sources that some kind of opinion that there will be extraterrestrial battle for ownership of human world or for human beings' souls. So, in your opinion, what the program says, or maybe says not, about this instance, for instance?
Our data says that you are correct. As outlandish as it may appear, there is support in our data sets over the last 10 to 12 years that has been growing and is now moving into a point where it almost dominates the whole of the model, that would support the idea that we are only within very short time, maybe 6 months to maybe 18 or 20 months, something like that, for absolute proof of contact with other than human or other than terrestrial intelligence, and that intelligence, at least so far as what is available within our linguistics, seems to find our humanity as very much a prize or a treasure. And for whatever reasons that we can speculate on, but that we won't really know until it occurs, the extraterrestrial intelligence is fascinated with humans in a way that they do not even find their own selves as fascinating. It is as though we have something in us, individually and collectively, that is very, very, very rare in universe, and thus is very prized. So it would not surprise me at all, I would not be startled to see the future develop in which extraterrestrials come to our area, or they're already here, and they make themselves known, and that they attempt to claim ownership on one level or dispute ownership on another level over us at some internal, intrinsic core level of humanity. Boy, I hope that made sense.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you.
Absolutely, I agree with you as well. And we can discuss later on this issue, because it's really interesting what the human being represent for the cosmos. But the second question would be, what the future do you see for the relations between, or what the future your program says about relations between, for instance, Russia and USA, and what is the main threat for the whole of us in all these relations, I would say?
This is a very difficult question because the USA is, at this moment, no longer the country that we were told it was in the 1940s and 50s. And it is now at the pinnacle of the powers that be Anglo-American empire that is attempting to control the planet. But because everything works in cycles, to everything there is a season. The season of empire is dying, and the Anglo-American empire that supports the powers that be in the Western world is dying. So in the future, Russia will not have to contend with the Anglo-American empire as a discrete whole. It may end up having to deal with large segments of that former empire that are in the process of settling in and discovering their identity once they are free of the influences of the powers that be. But the next few years, the rest of this year, the rest of all of 2010 and all of 2011 will be very chaotic in a planetary political sense. There will be 2 or 3 very large waves of political pressure coming from the general populace of the planet as we all discover and relate to our common humanity that exists without the borders that are imposed by the geopolitical process. So Russia in the future, in our data, actually turns out our data shows that Russia and Siberia as a combined unit will be a very large force for the rest of this century, that they will find their own intrinsic soul and their own personal expression of that soul, and will be a leader not by force, but because they go on out and cut the path in the future and others will simply follow. But they will be beset for the next few years by the chaotic thrashing around as the giant Anglo-American empire, which really is controlled by the Vatican and the Queen of England and the old aristocracies. As it dies, Russia needs to maintain its own internal center and allow the chaos around it to gradually die down from huge waves to small little frothy things, and then it can get on its business. Russia needs to be very clear, in my opinion. The data seems to suggest it will do so, but it needs to be very clear about not being sucked into needless engagements with the dying empire as the dying empire lashes out and tries desperately to keep itself together.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in China has a big view for the Russian Siberia as well, and they already too much into it. I mean, it would be very hard to keep integrity in that place, really.
I do not see integrity in that place. I actually see a whole new social order developing from the merging of the populace of northern China that moves into Siberia, as well as the intrinsic Siberian people, as well as the Russians from the west, will form a new Siberia, and truly from, say, 50 or 60 years from now, maybe even sooner, Siberia will be one of those places that the planet will look to for leadership in things technical and in resource management.
Hopefully you are correct, really, because the Russian populace is just simply dying off because of vodka, drugs, and it's really, the figures is horrible in there.
But I understand, but this again is part of a cycle. It is not a linear trend. It will not continue. Things are even now changing, and the next generation that is coming out of schools now is already beginning to start to transit into a new phase of, let's say, expression of the collective Russian soul. And the angst and the ennui and the harm and the hurt that is being expressed by the turning to drugs and sex and crime and all of this is actually waning. It has already reached its peak about 7 to 10 years ago, and it is on its way down. In spite of the numbers you see now, the tide has already turned on that, and I believe that probably by July or August of next year, you, Vladimir, will be able to say to himself, aha, I see that the tide has turned and things have decidedly changed.
Oh, praise God, if that came true, I would be really glad. Now, the next question, Cliff, is, in my understanding, and I'm sure it in yours, it's all about energy's flow. And the powers that be feed on those energies, which means energies of our emotions. And these energies, that's exactly what they're fighting for. That for them really currency and really food, as I see. Now, and if they reduce population, and as I said, more weaker people would be disappearing because of different causes. So they would have to deal with the strongest humans that will be left after. So what's the logic in their approach to if they want to reduce population with the vaccination, all those kind?
That's a real good question. There's two competing threads of thought here. You're quite correct. It makes no sense, does it? I mean, the idea that they would reduce population might suit them, but really they're all about having slaves, so why reduce the number of slaves that are keeping you going? That whole idea has never made much sense to me, even though we see manifesting reality that supports the idea with the vaccines and the bioengineered diseases and so on.